Rachel here. Welcome to my Slow TV Stitchery. Well, good morning everybody. You will see I'm about to finish Fishy's body. I have had some queries in my mind about how I'm going to do his tail and his feathers and fins. Okay. If anybody wants rational conversation today, I should suggest perhaps this is not the place to be. Clearly my brain isn't working quite the way it should. Never mind. I can usually stitch even when I'm feeling a bit vague, so we will soldier on. Thank you to everyone who has responded to my plea for books in which stitching plays a role. Suggestions are still coming in, which is wonderful. Including some mystery stories in which knitting or needlepoint provide clues. So I will, in the next few days, I will put up a page on my blog as a separate standalone page. But I will also ask the question directly on the blog to see whether we get different answers again. I'd certainly expect to, because I know there are people who follow me on Instagram or on Twitter who don't read the blog. So we shall see. We may get even more answers. I have been thinking that if I change the stitch used for Fishy's head relative to the body, but keep the same thread, that will probably effect as much change as I need. I hope so. The next version of Fishy, well, I'm not sure whether it is going to be easier. We'll just have to wait and see. It may end up being much more confusing than I'm prepared for. And for those who are interested, the music in the background at the moment is a series of string quartets by a lady called Maddelena Lombardini Sirmen, and I think she was a contemporary of Haydn, and she was a violin virtuoso, and she wrote the quartets to play when she was on tour. But the thing about tours in those days was that she didn't tour with a quartet. She toured herself, and the other parts were taken by whoever she could find when she got where she was going. So they're very like early Haydn in that almost all the heavy lifting is done by the first violin, and the other parts are mere accompaniment. And in Maddelena Lombardini's case, this is because she wasn't sure that she could rely on musicians of a particular standard where she went, so she had to make sure that she could produce a good concert regardless. And this is the recording by the Allegri. I think the Belcher Quartet have also, it might be the Belcher, it might be someone else. I know there are 2 recordings out there of Maddelena Lombardini Sirmen's quartets. I have this one because I have been going to Allegri concerts ever since I was 12 years old, and I remember them bringing it out and playing the quartets in concerts and being completely enchanted. I think I'm quite pleased with this. The stitches that are unstitched at the moment, which would be compensation stitches, I think I will choose to do in a solid colour. It's amazing how you can start off with your threads beautifully lined up and end up with a raggy mess. Just makes it very difficult to stitch efficiently. However, fortunately, I do have another needleful ready to go. Now, I am aware that I have my sketching stitches, if you like, still showing in some places and so firmly caught down in others that I'm not going to get them out. Not even with all the practice I've had undoing ornue, which is not something I want to revisit if I can avoid it. But I quite like the way it produces a slightly sketchy line and a sense of having actually planned some of the work beforehand. So certainly in these experiments I think I've decided not to mind about that. One of the things that I've learnt from watercolour painting is that, in fact, with watercolour painting, once you've put a glaze of paint over the top of your pencil line, you can't rub it out. So the trick is to do as little drawing as you can get away with, and make sure that you don't mind if you can still see it. And it tends not to show too much because there's the colour to distract the eye and different things going on. But if you go drawing a dark heavy line and painting up to the lines, you will probably hate it because it will look congested, unless you are doing very specific ink and wash and the line is all part of it. But if you're doing that, you use an ink pen, and pen just looks happier with watercolour than pencil does. So, as with everything, the trick is always to make it look like you meant it all along. And I am very well aware of the difficulties of that. But nevertheless, it is pretty much the whole trick. I only realised after the fact that I've used two different shades of grey-green in Fishy. If you look at these 10 stitches, they're much brighter than those. And on the skein, there's actually remarkably little difference between the two colours. So I'm a little surprised by how much difference there is once it's stitched. Very disconcerting. Must admit I am wishing that I had done the recording yesterday when the sun was out. But yesterday I was starting on an entirely different experiment. Which I will write about in a little while on the blog. But working method so far is a bit too rotational to be a good candidate for the videos. I do have my second version of Fishy to work here, so just see me having to start a new thread here for about 3 stitches. We shall see how we get along. I think I'm a little less certain that this is working. But after all, this is an experiment for more than one element. And if it works, if it tells me that one part works and another doesn't, then it has done its job. That's all for this session. I hope you enjoyed following along. Happy stitching!